envision what God's pattern is for the church to become the hope of the world. You see, God's pattern for every church member, every Christian, can be found in verse 6, in 6 actions that are found from verses 42 down to verse 47. And here are they. The Bible said they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. There was discipleship. In other words, people were learning how to behave. People were learning what God expects. You wonder why Genesis is a teaching church? Primarily because we believe that one of the problems in the church today is not a lack of preaching. We have a lot of good preaching where people walk out feeling inspired and energized, but then they don't know much. Because if they knew much, they would do more. So part of what we believe is that we need to be taught. That's discipleship. And so that's why on Wednesday night we're teaching through the book of Acts. Because we want us to get it. So there's discipleship. And when the Bible said that they fellowship one with another. In other words, they were having a good time. There was chemistry that was building. There was camaraderie. There was this sense of love that was just flowing through the place. So now, if a church is really going to do great things, then people need to love one another. Have you ever tried to work with a group that you don't love? Think about it. Have you ever tried to do that? Huh? The Bible says two can't walk except they agree. If you can't have fun together, it's going to be hard for you to accomplish a good task together. So fellowship becomes the glue. It is the adhesive. That's part of this whole pattern that God has set. And then it goes on to say they prayed. So in other words, they were talking to God and they were fellowshipping with one another. So if we are going to really fulfill the goal that God has placed in our heart to be the hope of the world, we're going to have to learn to pray. And we have talked a lot about that already. There's a difference between saying prayers and praying. And so that's why on Wednesdays, every single Wednesday, this year, we started from last year, we have dedicated to a time of fasting and prayer. And so on Wednesday nights when we come, before we start teaching, we are seeking the Lord's face on some specific things that we need to see change. Because God has started a work in us and we want to see it continue. So prayer becomes important. And part of what this means is that we're going to have to get out of this 5-minute prayer stuff. Can I be practical a little bit? Because we like to put God on a timer. God, I can only pray for 5 minutes, so hear me and do everything you want to do in that 5 minutes. But we're going to have to learn what it means to prevail and to travail in prayer. Because there are some things that we'll have to pray for over and over and over, not because God hasn't heard, but because God needs to do a deeper work in us. Because many times when God places something on your heart to pray about, it's because He wants you to make a difference in that. And sometimes we keep praying and praying and praying, God changes, God changes. No, God, change me because you need to. You remember Isaiah? He was in the temple praying. He said, Lord, I dwell among a people of unclean lips. And then all of a sudden, as he was seeing all of that, it suddenly dawned upon him. He said, woe is me! And then he said, Lord, send me. In other words, he didn't say, God, can't you resurrect Jeremiah? Can't you find out Elijah again? Immediately, the burden transferred or translated into commitment. I want you to hear me here. Many times, when God lays things on our hearts to pray about, it's because He wants you to make a difference in that. And we can keep praying and praying and praying until we get to the place where we can say like Isaiah said, Lord, send me. We might end up praying and praying and praying about it, and nothing happens.